Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our daily word. It's Tuesday, January 26th, another chilly, icy, dark, slippery kind of morning. I had to go to therapy first thing this morning, and it was a little challenging, especially in the parking lot, but wasn't too bad when I came out. Today was my last therapy for a while until I get a couple other things done, so I appreciate my girls in therapy and how much they've taken good care of me. So hope you are ready for this new day and ready for the challenges and all the things that we have in our life to come before us. You can see that behind me I have put flame to my candle this morning. I'm back at the church this morning. I put flame to my candle. It's a reminder of the presence of the Holy Spirit with us. And so if you have your candle, I invite you to light it as a reminder of the Holy Spirit's presence in your life today. And so this morning, I have chosen just a couple of verses from Psalm 46. Now, Psalm 46, I know we've done before the whole thing. And Psalm 46 is one of my favorites. And actually, I use it often at funerals because it gives such good news to us. And it reminds us of God's presence. And I thought about these two verses today because Psalm 46... it talks about, let me just read the two verses. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city. It shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. I don't know if you remember, but if you were here a couple of years ago for our Lent reflections that we had every Wednesday night during the season of Lent, a couple of years ago, about this time of year, a little bit later, but a couple years ago, I went down to the south end of town where the river, where the Great Miami River flows through, and I got us this big thing of dirty, yucky river water. And I got it, and when I went down there that day, and I walked down the boat launch just a little bit, the water was just going what seemed like to me 100 miles an hour. I'm sure that it wasn't, but I was determined that day to get some of that river water. And so I took my containers with me and walked down there rather carefully and got that water from the river. And I remember us coming back, and that first night I poured that water into this glass container that we could see. And that very first night that we gathered for our Lent reflections, that river water was dirty and disgusting, and all the sediment was just still stirred up in it. But every week, as we let that glass jar, that glass vase sit, and every week as we came, we noticed that more and more every week the sediment settled to the bottom. And from the top to the bottom, the water started to become clearer. Now, it never became completely clear, that river water, but that sediment every single week settled further and further to the bottom. And what was left at the top was this clearer water. And to me, that was a reminder of God's presence with us as we live our lives. Now, here we are 10, 11 months, pushing 12 months into this pandemic. And there are days, if you're like me, there are days that it seems like the glass vessel that we're looking through is like that very first night, that the river water is just churned up and we can't see through it. And it seems as if we are never, ever going to have the sediment settle to the bottom. But then I'm reminded about this text for us in Psalm 46. Now, the bigger part of this Psalm 46, as you know, as it begins, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake in their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. Those two verses remind me and should remind us that in life, we know we have these moments when the mountains shake, the earth trembles, and it seems like we're never going to get back to any kind of normalcy, and the sediment never wants to settle to the bottom. But then the psalmist reminds us in Psalm 46, as it holds these images of mountains shaking and foaming seas and nations in an uproar, like it seems, in this time of trial, that through the middle of that, the psalmist says, there's a river that flows. And those streams make glad the city of God. And that will never be moved, the psalmist says to us. God will help it when morning dawns. You know, I think about that in light of every single day that we face in the world. We get up, the news hasn't changed much. You know, I got up this morning and it was icy, and I had to think twice about going to therapy this morning because I'm just a little scared about falling on the ice given my current condition. But I went and had these great conversations with the therapist there. And today was my last day for a while. My condition hasn't changed much, and I need to save my therapy days for later, sometime in March. And so we got all done, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed talking, and Kim and Julie, my main two therapists, they just gave me a hug and said, stay in touch, let us know if you need us, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. For me, you see, and I'm sure you've been in those situations, for me, Kim and Julie are like that river that flows in my life. Now, the sediment, because of my current health conditions, and I'll share more about that later, the sediment hasn't settled. But because of their care for me and because of God's presence in my life, the sediment has started to settle. And I think that's how it is for us in our lives as we trust God, as we look to God to guide us in our lives, as we know that God's always present with us. The morning dawns and the sediment has settled a little more, and the morning dawns and the sediment has settled a little more. This psalmist reminds us and should remind us that again and again and again and again, we turn to God. And again, God helps that river that flows through our lives, that glad river. And you see what these are words of assurance. The psalmist says, yeah, we're going to have those times when the mountains quake and the earth seems to shake and the seas roar and foam. But in the midst of it, there is a river. And that river is the presence of God. And in addition, the presence of other people in our lives that help us. The holy habitation of the Most High. The psalmist says, God is in the midst of the city. It shall not be moved. And for me, that's the good news that I needed to hear today. And maybe you needed to hear that in the midst of us, in the midst of our city, in the midst of our challenges and our trials and the things that are difficult, God is in the midst of our habitation. And the river of God runs through. And, you know, as we face the challenges of the day and the challenges of the future, to me, this is the good news that we need to hear. And so, Friends, look close. Look and know that the sediment is indeed starting to settle. And when it seems that it's not, it's then that God reminds us that the river flows in the midst of us, and God is present with us, and we shall not be moved. That's the good news that I needed to hear today, and that I needed to share today, and hopefully the news you needed to hear today. I pray that you'll look deep inside of your hearts and your lives and know where God is. I pray that God will help you to see where God's river runs in your life. I pray you'll know peace today, peace that passes understanding, peace that the disciples knew when they were locked in the upper room with great fear, and it seemed that their lives were in deep turmoil, and Jesus came and simply offered them peace. Nothing else, just peace. I hope you'll know that peace, and I hope you'll know God's love, and as importantly, that you'll know my love for all of you. I pray you'll have a great day, and I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.